This is me, at age 5 or 6, dressed in traditional indigenous clothing, participating in the annual Virgen de Guadalupe parade in San Salvador, the capital city of El Salvador, where I was born. Is it strange that I don't remember much of my childhood? I have a few still frames, but no real memories of my childhood. And so, to know more about this day, I asked my mom for details. We head over to a coffee shop, and she shares with me that this parade is a Mexican Catholic tradition that is also celebrated in El Salvador. This conversation is one of the many we've had since I've started learning more about my Salvadorian roots, and they often lead to themes related to our forced migration. During these conversations, she often shares with me how afraid she was for our safety during the Civil War. My brother was a teenager, and both the military and the opposition were recruiting young boys to join the fight. This was a nightmare scenario for her, as she had already lost two brothers in the war. I shared with her my thoughts on the current state of affairs in El Salvador. The president just arrested another 6,000 gang members, adding to the 16,000 already in prison, I share. How are they going to support so many of them? She asks. What a waste of life, she adds. This exchange led me to think about the beautifully illustrated book artist David Ills created depicting the history of colonial violence people from El Salvador have faced since contact with los conquistadores starting in 1519. The greatest weapon that the Spanish deployed were waves of epidemic diseases that reduced the indigenous population to just 10% of their pre contact levels in Mesoamerica, making resistance against European colonizers extremely difficult. And yet, they fought back on several occasions. Unfortunately, they were outnumbered, and by 1860, there were only 14 Spanish families who had taken ownership over land and crops and held control over food and income for the entire population. This is the colonial violence that my mother's family had to endure as peasant farmers. My mother still doesn't fully understand this history. She still doesn't know what drove people to fight back during the Civil War that started in 1980. She was too afraid to ask questions. She shares with me that the only reason she's alive is because she kept her mouth shut. She didn't take sides. She didn't have any political opinions because she witnessed what would happen to people that spoke too much during war. They disappeared. She cautions me as I speak about the injustice Indigenous peoples have and continue to face in the Americas due to colonial systems of power. You can see how afraid she is for my safety. She pleads with me and asks me to think about my family. She shushes me in this public space when I start getting animated while sharing what the Canadian government has done and continues to do to Indigenous peoples. She brings up the remains of the children found in the residential schools. I can see her struggling to make sense of how a country that provided her and her daughter with a safe home could have done this. How can the same government that welcomed us have done this to children? She asks. They wanted land, they wanted resources, they wanted empire, power, and control over all of it. The same thing that the Spanish wanted in El Salvador, I tell her. The same colonial power that causes social and economic injustice that make people leave their homeland to provide a safer place to build a life for their children. The same injustice that made so many parents leave their children in El Salvador in search for work elsewhere. These children were left alone in a war torn, poverty stricken country. Many of the gang members in jail have lived through this violence. We fled and were lucky, I share with her. Many did not have the recourses to escape and find a home. These are some of the conditions that led my mother to spend her savings and get my brother out of the country at age 16. She hired a human smuggler, known as a coyote, to take him to the US, to an unknown land with no family waiting. This is why she sent me to my father, who lived in the US, even though he had left us. This is why she sold her business and hired another coyote to make the long and dangerous trip across the border to join me in the US and face more violence. This is why we left and started over in Canada. These are some of the sacrifices my mother has made to get her kids to a safe place, a place where we could live without fear of dying. This is the story that guides my scholarship. I want to ask the questions that my mother was too afraid to ask. I want to understand this history of colonial violence and the impact it has on people. I want to celebrate these unheard stories and inspire transformational change.